chess master Magnus Carlsen, late only 30 secs left. As the stage was set for an epic battle at the 2022 FIDE World Blitz Championship, the spectators eagerly awaited the clash between Grandmaster Vladislav Kovalev and the reigning world champion Magnus Carlsen. Both players carried with them a legacy of exceptional achievements and a reputation for their strategic brilliance. Vladislav Kovalev, hailing from Belarus, is a formidable grandmaster whose prowess on the chessboard has garnered him numerous accolades and accolades. He clinched the title of the Belarusian chess champion in 2016, showcasing his exceptional skills and strategic acumen. He secured the title of the Belarusian junior chess champion not once, not twice, but 3 times. As he continues to grace the international chess arena, Vladislav Kovalev remains a formidable force, ready to take on new challenges, face off against renowned opponents, and here he is present to compete against the legend Magnus Carlsen, a name that resonated with greatness in the chess community. However, there was an unexpected twist in the tale. The game began with Kovalev making his move of e4, but to everyone's surprise, Carlsen was conspicuously absent from his chair. Confusion rippled through the room as the clock continued to tick. Speculations started to fly. Has Carlsen lost track of time? Was there some unforeseen circumstance that had delayed the world champion's arrival? Meanwhile, Kovalev maintained his composure, sitting patiently at the board. Just as the clock threatened to tick away, a sudden commotion erupted. Carlsen burst into the room, sprinting towards his chair. Time was of the essence, and Carlsen had only a handful of seconds remaining on his clock. Although Carlsen's strategic brilliance extends beyond classical chess, he has also excelled in rapid and blitz formats, earning him the title of World Rapid Chess Champion on multiple occasions. But what can he do in a few seconds? Let's get back to the match and see the outcome. Carlsen immediately plays his first move, e6, with 31 seconds left on the clock. Kovalev, now facing the challenge of capitalizing on his time advantage, contemplated his options. The pressure mounted as he sought the most effective plan while being aware of the limited time remaining. Carlsen, despite his time constraint, remained composed and focused, showcasing his ability to make precise moves even under extreme pressure. Kovalev made an early move by involving a pawn on c4 and potentially leading to an isolated queen-pawn structure if black takes on c4. Carlsen is quick with his moves, and he builds his time up to 35 seconds, whereas Kovalev is taking too much time to think before he responds. Kovalev finally decides to bring his knight out to c3. However, Carlsen ignores the threat on the d5 pawn and instead chooses to castle. Kovalev takes on d5, covering the check with a rook. As a response, Magnus Carlsen moves his knight to d7, making some adjustments to his pieces before pressing the clock. Carlsen continues adjusting his pieces by playing h6, preventing white's dark-squared bishop from reaching g5. Kovalev may have missed an opportunity to play bishop g5 on the previous move. Now the dark-squared bishop doesn't have many good developing squares. If it moves to e3, Carlsen will recapture on d5, putting the bishop on e3 under attack. Carlsen's position is excellent, as he is poised to win the pawn on d5 and secure a strong knight on d5. Kovalev tries to gain activity for his other pieces by playing knight to e5. However, Carlsen ignores the knight and captures the pawn on d5. During this phase of the game, the time situation has become almost equal between the players. Kovalev has spent a total of 2 minutes on the first 5 or 6 moves, and now has only 30 seconds left on his clock. The game is played at a very fast pace, resembling a hyper-bullet game with an increment. Carlsen pushes his pawn up to c6 to protect his knight on e5. Instead of trading pieces on d5, Kovalev brings his queen out to b3, putting more pressure on Carlsen's knight. He threatens to capture on d5 3 times. Carlsen leans back in his chair, realizing the time pressure, and finally begins using the little time he has left. With 15 seconds on the clock, he moves his queen to b6, offering an exchange of queens. Kovalev chooses not to capture the pawn on d5, opting for an exchange of queens instead. Going into an endgame against Magnus Carlsen, where Carlsen has the bishop pair, is not advisable. In the situation where Kovalev is the one who has to make moves quickly due to the fear of losing on time. Meanwhile, Carlsen still has 15 seconds on his clock. Carlsen chases Kovalev's only active piece out of the center, presumably with his light-squared bishop going to either f5 or e6 to secure the isolated queen pawn. Carlsen brings his rook up to a4, attacking the d4 pawn. He continues the pressure by attacking the knight, forcing it into an unfavorable position. With only 1 second left, Kovalev has to retreat the knight all the way back to e1. Kovalev made a big mistake with the move a3. Carlsen pushes his pawn up to b5, expanding on the king side, and then brings his rook to c4, threatening the move b4. Kovalev manages to defend the b2 pawn. Carlsen begins to expand on the king side, restricting Kovalev's king and knight with a well-positioned pawn structure. Kovalev's knight had done a good job getting into the center and chasing away Carlsen's light-squared bishop. Carlsen gradually moves his king over to the queen side. He maneuvers his pieces, trying to find a way into white's position. Carlsen keeps his rook in contact with one of white's pawns, initially on a4 and then bringing it up to a1. Kovalev's rook doesn't have active prospects, but he plays rook to d1, keeping the gates to white's queenside shut. Carlsen continues to grab space and put pressure on white's pieces, while Kovalev remains somewhat stagnant and brings his king up to d3. There is a moment where Carlsen's bishop almost checks Kovalev's king on d3, but Kovalev manages to avoid it. Carlsen plays a check on b5, driving the king back to c2. King b3 becomes a big threat, as it would win the b4 pawn. Carlsen brings his bishop to c4 just in time, and the king moves up to b1, chasing the rook away. The rook can relocate to h8 or e8, and it attacks the knight. The knight doesn't move, and instead, it takes the bishop. This turn of events looks bad for Kovalev, as Carlsen's pawns on c4 and b4 are strong. Kovalev shakes his head, realizing the difficult position he is in. Carlsen might win this game. Carlsen plays rook to d4, attacking black's pawns, and then plays king to c5. There might be a move like d6 coming up. Carlsen pushes his pawn to b3 and takes the pawn on f3, further solidifying his position and gaining material advantage. In the final moments of the game, Carlsen is up a pawn, and his king is chasing Kovalev's rook off the b-file. Carlsen offers an exchange of rooks with rook to f4, knowing that the resulting pawn endgame would be clearly lost for white due to being down a pawn. Kovalev desperately tries to defend, but he loses the second pawn on g4. Although he manages to pick up the pawn on b3, Carlsen now has connected passed pawns that are advancing down the board. Kovalev tries to set his own pawn in motion, but it is not fast enough and gets blocked by black's rook. At this point, Kovalev resigns from the game. Carlsen's exquisite endgame technique and the remarkable display by the world champion, who started the game with only 30 seconds on his clock. It is a frustrating defeat for Kovalev, while Carlsen adds another victory to his record. This game was a remarkable display of skill, determination, and resilience from both players. Despite the limited time available, Magnus's endgame technique, combined with his time management skills, makes him a formidable opponent even in time-critical situations. Similarly, we have another thrilling game in which Magnus shows his brilliance and rapid chess skills. Magnus Carlsen versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. A vibrant chess atmosphere filled the room. Multiple games were being played simultaneously, creating a bustling and energetic ambiance. And as you can see, the Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen is late again. After some time, when Magnus finally arrives and he prepares to play his first moves, Wesley arrives and there was a playful exchange between Magnus and Wesley. He asks Magnus's permission to make the first move, to which Magnus gladly agrees. Soon, all eyes were drawn to the encounter between Magnus Carlsen and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, commonly known as MVL. He is one of the top chess players globally. He has competed in multiple chess Olympiads, representing the French national team, and has been a key contributor to their success. MVL has also participated in the Candidates Tournament, which determines the challenger for the World Chess Championship. He remains a formidable opponent for any player, consistently challenging the established hierarchy and leaving a lasting impression on the chess community with his performances and contributions. And here he is, facing the Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. The game between Magnus and MVL unfolded with great intensity. Magnus opened with the move knight to f3, inviting an open Sicilian defense. However, MVL plays e5 instead of the expected move, and Magnus decides to castle. As the game progressed, Magnus made precise moves, seizing the initiative and creating imbalances on the board. MVL fought back with resourceful counterplay, but Magnus remained resolute, not in a rush but calculating his every move. The tension grew as the clock ticked down, and both players had limited time remaining. Magnus skillfully maneuvered his pieces, exploiting tactical opportunities and gaining an advantage. Magnus captures the d6 pawn, and Magnus Carlsen is now 2 pawns up. The queen trade occurs, leaving both players with bishops of opposite colors, but with Magnus having 2 extra pawns. There are other pieces still on the board. Rook to f7 is suggested as a good move, with the idea of knight to e8. Now MVL has 5 seconds, and Magnus has 15 seconds. In the final moments of the game, with the outcome all but certain, Magnus made his decisive moves with precision and grace. The position on the board reflected his dominance, with his pieces harmoniously coordinating their efforts to restrict MVL's counterplay. With each move, Magnus's advantage grew, and his strategic maneuvers left MVL with no room to maneuver. The tension in the air was palpable as the audience eagerly awaited Magnus's final move, a move that would solidify his victory. In a display of confidence and mastery, Magnus executed his last series of moves flawlessly, creating an unstoppable force that overwhelmed MVL's defenses. The spectators watched in awe as Magnus's final move materialized on the board, leaving no doubt about the
outcome.